4 charts, talk a little bit about the market. How you going? What are the things to watch this week ahead, mate?
Oh, do you know what? I think that there's so much to talk about. It's difficult in some respects to know where to start, but I agree with Alexis. I was going to start here with the S&P, but I do want to touch on the euro because I agree with Alexis. I mean, Christine Lagarde must just be so happy that the move in the dollar has managed to weaken the euro a little bit, but she's going to want a lot more movement than that. And she's not the only one. We'll talk about that in a moment, just in a bit more detail. But let's just start with the S&P. And what I expect for this week, there is a potential trading opportunity, but not necessarily in this. There is opportunities, that there will be opportunities in the S&P, and if we are focusing on 4 charts, we could lump probably the S&P in with the Dow and the Nasdaq for right now. Maybe less so the Nasdaq. It does seem to be a slightly different beast. But look at this on the weekly chart, and it looks like this area down here at around about the 3,002 level. 3,200 level is the rejection point for right now, and I wouldn't be that surprised to see us bounce around here for a little while. I'm not anticipating a breakthrough these upper levels before the US election, but I think we may have defined our range. That it's broad. It's a very, very broad range. Maybe these highs here, down to there. So there's almost between a 5 to 10% range going on here, which means that there probably will be opportunities. But I think it's going to be tough. I've got to say, we were talking before we came on air, and I think it's going to be a really tough opportunity to take, because if you look at the charts on the weekly, we are still in an uptrend, and that would suggest that time, over the next few weeks, we would probably see, through a few weeks to few months, we'll probably see further moves to the upside. The question is, if we are in a range, where would we like to position ourselves to get that move to the upside, and are we willing to hold? And my personal thought would be, if we get near the bottom end of it again, then I'll be quite happy to maybe look for buying opportunities. This area right now is not too bad, but you've still got quite a broad spectrum of price to kind of contend with. You look at this on a daily chart, it's still in a downtrend, and it suggests that maybe settling down around about the 3,002 level, which is this low down here. Maybe one more time to try and pick it up. If we see some kind of price action reversal pattern down there, then I might well be interested. This 3 chart pattern here does look like a morning star, so it looks like that there is some buying and maybe some fairly significant buying, but I haven't seen anything that really suggests something that is all that committed at this particular stage. So I think if we are if we're going to focus on the range, we've got to kind of think, well, are we likely to go higher or lower after the election? If we're likely to go higher, we can try and pick some positions up at the bottom end of the range, and then just hold on for dear life, effectively, and hope that we end up somewhere in the middle of the range, so we can get stops at break even before the US election really plays out, and then see if we can take off for another leg to the upside. But there are a lot of moving parts, and this is why there's so much to talk about in many respects. And one of the moving parts, is Alexis has touched upon, really is the dollar. And the dollar's is in a fascinating scenario and situation here, because we see here with the dollar that that we have a move back into this area potentially. We were all looking at this inverted head and shoulders down here. Let me just get rid of this. We're looking at these inverted head and shoulders down here, and price has broken to the upside. But again, just like we've been looking at with the S&P, this is in a downtrend. So I'm not really that convinced that this all of a sudden is going to turn around and start moving higher. I still think the dollar's got a fairly decent chance of going lower if it hits around about the 96 level. It could be 95. Geoff and I have toyed with 95, but I think between 95 and 96, we could see the dollar turn around. If the dollar turn around, we see the euro turn around, we see the Swissy turn around, we see gold turn around. So I think we look at the dollar index to really get a good gauge of what we'd like to trade. in respects of how we express the move that could potentially, as I say, come back down again. But I don't think is yet. I still think there's some move to some room to run with some upside dollar, which again puts those equities in a little bit of hiatus, and I think that probably freezes them where they are, or within that range. I think it's the same with the euro. The euro continues to weaken somewhat. I think the Swissy would significantly weaken somewhat. But if we go back and start looking at the problems with that, then the Swissy I find probably the most fascinating and the most interesting when it comes down to this. Because if we look at the Swissy, and I haven't got onto my final chart yet of what I'd like to trade this week, but I just want to touch on this. The Swissy has seen huge moves to the upside against the dollar. As this comes down, this is the dollar Swiss. So as the dollar comes down against the Swissy is moving up. So this is the Swissy strengthening and strengthening and strengthening. Now, all of a sudden, it's broken away. Another inverted head and shoulders down here. So this has played out perfectly. Now, the Swiss National Bank do not want a strong Swiss dollar. So, sorry, a Swiss franc. They don't want a strong Swiss franc. So this move to the downside was not good for the Swiss National Bank. Now, they haven't really done anything hugely not controversial. What's the words? They haven't really done an extreme. They haven't done anything hugely extreme to kind of get this back on track for getting it a little bit weaker. And we see this move to the upside. And as Alexis was saying about the euro, Christine Lagarde being pretty happy with the euro weakening. It's the same really for the Swiss National Bank. They want to see this weaken. And the reason that they want to see this weaken is that as things have changed in the, with the global pandemic, people have moved over to the Swissy for some as a potential safe haven, just like they do with the Japanese yen. So it has almost been it's stated how valued the Swissy is. Now, the Swiss National Bank also traditionally have kind of slightly higher interest rates, but slightly lower interest rates just to kind of balance things out a little bit. But what's happened is the nations across the board have been lowering their interest rate and been more in line with what's happened with the Swissy. So inevitably, it has strengthened. Now, because we know that these national banks do not want this to happen, the Swiss National Bank don't want a strong Swiss franc, not overly strong. Same with the euro. What we're waiting for is a move on their part, which counteracts the lower interest rates that are being brought into play with the likes of the dollar and the pound as well. So it's making it less and less competitive. So the question is, what will they do? What are they going to do to kind of weaken the Swissy significantly enough? And this is where we start to get into the dollar may well be a strong player for the next few weeks as we go into the election. But what happens after that? Because as the dollar strengthens, it kind of sorts out some of the issues for these other countries. But what happens after that? What happens if the dollar does turn and we start to see a weaker dollar? Do these other countries then start to say, you know what, we can't handle the dollar weakening again and our currency strengthening because we're just not competitive anymore? They have to increase balance sheets and they put their financial health under great risk. So there's a lot of moving parts going on here that we need to focus on. Now, the last chart that I want to bring you, and the chart that is what I'd like to play in the near term. So if we're talking about this stuff, it's really longer term play, and it's just something to be aware of as time goes on. We can't just hit the button and say, well, the dollar's going to turn here, so let's start to trade the Swissy in the opposite direction again. Because we need to make sure that we are aware of what the Swiss National Bank's policy has been, up until that point. They may do nothing while it's weakening, but that might put them in a position where they think maybe now's the time to move to get it to weaken even further. Now we got a bit of momentum. That will put us back as well to gold. But as I say, the final chart that I'd like to bring in is copper. Because I've been looking at some of these mining stocks, and I wonder whether we might be at a bit of a turning point with some of these. Now, the copper, the chart for copper is tradable in itself if you've got it on the broker, but you can get more specific, and I'm much more interested in going into some of these mining stocks. I'll talk about them more next week, but there are, I think, maybe opportunities to kind of trade copper as a bit of more of a nuance than just copper itself. But when we look at this on a weekly, hasn't really broken down significantly yet. But if we look at it on a daily, then this has actually taken out a trend line just here. Just along there, we've seen the copper chart kind of break through. Is this a significant enough test? And it may well be. That might even be a little bit lower. Is that a significant enough test? Well, it might well be, because we've seen it refuse. It's tried to get back above to this level and beyond, but it's refused that particular level. So this is why I'm quite keen on copper for next week. You know, if we're talking about the near term, what would we like to see and what we'd like to trade in the near term? Copper's kind of coming up as a bit of a winner for me. So so this is what I would like to this is what I'd like to try and trade next week. I will go through it in the UK and US session when I get in, but not 100% of my focus, but a lot of my focus is going to be on a moving copper to the downside. So potentially looking for some bearish moves in copper with a target somewhere down here at $2.70, I would say. So we're up around about we're up at about 3 right now. So down about 2.7. I'll be looking for taking profit in dollar, well, in copper, which is around about a 10% move. So that's what I'm looking for. And I'd say that probably wraps me up. I think I'm done on my time.
Sorry, mate. It's not about your time, mate. I just put a little quick thing into YouTube, asking the team if they wanted us to discuss anything. We've got nothing in the chat here for anyone at this stage, but we've had Dominic come in and ask us to do silver, and I thought I might involve the team, mate. We might have a little team chat about silver. I haven't had a look at silver for a little while. Do you have a silver chart, Ash?
I do, yeah, and I think it's a really good topic of conversation as well. Silver. It's another chart that I've been looking at.
Just going to warn them that we'll get PH and Alexis to come and have a look at silver straight after you, mate. So let's go you, then Paul Hutton, who's in the room. Paul said you've got a mullet. What's he talking about, Ash?
Oh, do you know, he's absolutely right. And I was looking at that like just earlier on. I was like, geez, I'm starting to look more and more Australian by the day. Yeah, got to get rid of the mullet. Got to get rid of the mullet. Do you know what I've been doing? I've been hacking at my hair on my own, which is not good. I think I might crumble this week though and go to see the hairdressers. Apparently they're very safe, so I'm going to go. But we got spikes over here, mate. I mean, it's like, you know, I think my paranoia is justified in this country. Look, it's pretty dangerous. Look, I'm going to open this up for discussion. Good morning, Simon. Welcome along. Hey, Pedro. Nice to see you as well, guys. Crystal, mullets are in. I'm going to open this up. We could do a little fundraiser. Perhaps we could donate some money to a cancer cause or something. And all we need to do is have Sally come in and oh no, I'll get Molly to do it. I think she'd love
that. Molly come and shave your head. We'll raise a few dollars.
Yeah, be happy to do that, mate, for a charity, not a problem.
Hey, Shukri. Hi, everyone. Nice to hear from you guys on the chat. Lots of people liking the show. We do appreciate it when you like the shows on the different things. And don't forget to subscribe to YouTube. We are running a bit of a competition at the moment for those that subscribe to YouTube. Welcome at Ainslie as well. We'll involve you first, but Ash, let's do you on silver first. I'm going to have a quick look at the silver chart because I'll get into it, but we'll go you, Paul Hutton, Alexis, Ainslie, and then me.
Yeah, well, silver is a fascinating chart. I think I feel the same about silver as I do the S&P. To be honest, I think you know, a huge drop to the downside with silver. Now, there's no doubt that that the price of silver will be affected by the dollar, and because I suspect we'll probably be easing a little bit higher with the dollar before we hit the real rails, then I think we could see possibly silver just bounce around in a little bit of a range, but I suppose I'm more bearish than I am bullish at this stage, with a bullish outlook in the longer term. You know, I would like to get silver. I'd like to get silver in the portfolio, but just not yet. I still think that there's probably some moves to go with silver. But if we look at where we are now, and this is the real kind of question. If we believe, look at that, it's right on the level there. I really like where silver is. We are in a buy zone. I think we do probably pop higher. And I think maybe the dollar takes a bit of a rest next week, you know, which is why, you know, I'm focused on copper for my near term. But the dollar over the next month, I suspect, over October, I suspect will just bobble around but be slightly higher. But over the next week, I wonder whether we might get a bit of a pause in the upside with the dollar, and we could actually get a bit of a bounce in the likes of silver. But I really like where it is. It is in a buy zone. We do have this hammer here, and it's a clean one as well. So it's a beautiful bar, that is, because with a hammer, you want it to be hammering out a low where there's nothing else around it, and there's no other price action in the where the tail is of this. So it's hammered out a low. It looks like it's done the classic move that hammers do, which is hammer out where the lowest price point is and then bounced up. And it doesn't have price action to the left of it, directly to the left of it, and it doesn't have price action directly to the right of it. So far this looks pretty clean, and it looks, technically speaking, like we could get a bounce here. And as I say, the big question is, are you trading a bounce, a dead cat bounce, or are you trading a potential continuation of the longer term trend? I suspect we could be in dead cat bounce territory. So I would be looking at silver for a little bit of upside, but probably only to around about 24.80 before it could start potentially turning around again. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't think it's a really good price down here longer term, but what I'd like to see on the price action is it come back again, test it, and then hold, and then I'd be interested in taking in silver long and holding on to it for a while. But my first position and my first opinion on silver would be look for a bounce to the upside, but don't expect it to go too much higher than around about the 25.